I don't practice Santeria, I ain't got no crystal ball. Well, I had $1 million, but I'd spend it all if I could find that Hannah in that Sancho that she's fine. Well, I'd pop a cap in Sancho and I'd slap her down. But I really wanna know, my baby, but I really wanna say I can't define. Well, it's love that I lead. Oh, my soul will have to wait till I get back. Find a Hannah of my own. Daddy's
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Maximilian Must Know. This one is on a very popular and well-regarded scent from the house of Gucci. I'm sure that everyone knows of Gucci, at least on a fashion level. And on the men's side of things, they're perhaps best known for their horse-bit loafers and the interlocking double G's that adorn so many sneakers, bags, ties, and belts. They are a top-flight fashion company and have been so for a long time. Now, a little bit of history on Gucci. They were actually started in Florence, Italy in the early 1920s. Really began as a simple high-end leather goods maker that did bags, wallets, things of that nature. A large share of their company was eventually bought up by the Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy Group, and they actually attempted a hostile takeover of Gucci that failed in a huge legal case. Now, in the late 1980s, there were three very famous designers that worked for Gucci who were unknown at the time. That were Calvin Klein, Jeffrey Bean, and a very young and unknown Tom Ford. And in the mid-90s, Tom Ford actually became the creative director of the brand, leading it into its most lucrative period. And by the way, he got that position when he was 32 years old. So think about that level of trust and talent they had in Tom Ford. Then when Gucci acquired Yves Saint Laurent, he became the creative director of that company as well, really bringing that company back from ruin and launching two extremely popular and groundbreaking ad campaigns for their men's fragrances at the time. Of course, Opium and the highly sought-after, now discontinued Original M7. But in 2004, Tom Ford and the CEO of Gucci, Domenico De Sole, had serious creative differences, and he wound up leaving the company to start his own brand. It is obviously named Tom Ford, and he is doing a hell of a job with it, both in terms of clothing and fragrances. He's got some serious winners, and we'll take a look at some of those in the future. But today is about Gucci, and specifically about the fragrance Pour Homme 2. Gucci released their first fragrance in 1974, simply titled Gucci No. 1 for women, and since then they've released over 40 fragrances for men, women, and unisex. Now for men, they have a couple of big-time winners and a few big-time losers. The original Gucci Homme was released in 1976 and reformulated in 2004. I believe that fragrance is being phased out and discontinued, and so finding it now is not the easiest thing to do, and it can be quite expensive on resale websites. Also, already discontinued is their 1998 Gucci Envy, which is also very well regarded by fragrance heads, but another one that is basically impossible to find without that heavy markup. So what are they focusing on now? Well, first off, their Gucci Pour Homme by Gucci and a few flankers of that fragrance, and their Sephora hit Gucci Guilty and all of its ridiculous flankers. Gucci Pour Homme is okay. I picked that up when it came out, but I really think that the Guilty line is atrocious. I think it's really bad. And it's not that it smells bad, but it's just so boring and non-original. It's almost hard for me to believe that the same company that made Gucci Envy, which is this beautiful fragrance with incense and cardamom and pimento berry, and the company that made Gucci Pour Homme 1, which had amber and leather and ginger, could produce something as generic as Gucci Guilty and all of its flankers. Frederick Malle once said that other fragrance houses are selling cigarettes and his is selling fine cigars. And to me, Gucci Guilty are the cigarettes of the industry. I'm sorry if you like them. I'm not trying to offend you. But to me, those scents are made for kids who go to malls, shop at Sephora and Hollister, buy whatever music's on Billboard, and really don't want to think for themselves. So they look for fragrances that aren't going to ruffle feathers, that are highly accessible and not too expensive. And that's not me. I want my fragrances to challenge me and make me think and make me be on the lookout for that perfumer and be excited about what they might put out next. Now, thankfully, before Gucci made this lame-ass turn, they did bless us with Gucci Pour Homme 2, which was released in 2007, and it was composed by the fragrance consultant company named Maine, who's also done work for Crabtree & Evelyn, Atelier, Terry Mugler, and most recently 4711. Gucci Pour Homme 2 is easiest to find in these 100 ml bottles, and you're looking at anywhere for 60 to 80 bucks for a bottle. I picked mine up at Sephora, and I really like the bottle and box, which you can see here. It's a very heavy glass, one of the heaviest glass bottles I've come across. You can see it's quite large, and it has a really cool, heavy, weighted aluminum cap. They're both very heavy. The bottle's heavy on its own, but when you add that brushed aluminum gold-colored cap, it just becomes a massive size bottle, and just so heavy. And I like that. I think it's elegant. And then you have the box with just a Gucci pattern, your information on the bottom, as well as your batch code. But just A1 packaging here. I think it's very well done. Now, let's talk about the fragrance and what you can expect from it. The top notes on this guy are going to be bergamot and violet leaves. Your middle is going to be pimento, black tea, and cinnamon. And your base notes are going to be tobacco leaves, musk, myrrh, and olive wood. And you know, I'm adding this myself, but I get a heavy dose of cardamom recently when I've been wearing this. Almost like a cup of chai, which is an Indian milk and tea drink that's pretty heartily spiced. But the first thing that's going to strike you about this fragrance is just how light it is. Reading these notes, you probably expect a heavy, dark juice suited best for fall and winter, and I think that it's probably perfect for fall, but too light for the winter. You see those tea leaves really mild and chill this guy out. And it's crazy because for those people who drink tea and enjoy the ritual of the leaves and steeping them, you know that it's a very calm and soothing and therapeutic experience, and that sort of tranquility and serenity really translated into this scent. Quite a feat to achieve in a home run. Here, it is what it is, and it says what it is. It is what it says, and it says what it is. But the first thing you get really is that beautiful violet note that just pops, and it's gorgeous and sweet, but not too sweet, mellowed out by the bitterness of the bergamot, and then you get that real robust cinnamon, pimento, cardamom, and tea notes. But, stop the record. There is a big problem with this scent, and that is that the longevity and projection is piss poor. You know they say in a good show business you should always leave the crowd wanting more, and I agree with that completely, and it's the same thing in a great restaurant. You don't want to leave completely stuffed. You want to leave full but still wishing there was one more bite. That is what they say the perfect portion size is. And with this, you're not even full. I get about half an hour on my skin with this, and for $78, I think that's unacceptable for an eau de toilette. And it sucks because this smells so good and people love it on me, but who cares if it's going quickly and you have to apply so much if you get through a day. To me, it really detracts from the overall experience on this fragrance, and I have a hard time giving this more than a 5 out of 10. And that is the lowest rating I've given anything yet, mainly for the reason that usually if I spend around $100 in a fragrance, I'm going to know I like it. Otherwise, I won't buy it, and therefore there'll be no review. I don't blind buy a lot of $100 fragrances. I might pop them to a discount spot like a Marshall's or TJ Maxx and blind buy something that gets good reviews on base notes. I've picked up a lot of those recently. But with higher priced designer and niche scents, I always smell them first. And I smelled this, and I love the smell, and I guess I just didn't pay attention to the longevity. I knew that some people had issues with it on base notes, but I overlooked that because I love the scent. Usually I get really good longevity and projection, but this one is really tough, and the projection is pretty weak too, as it stays real close to the skin. I would recommend this really to any male or woman out of high school. I could definitely see college students wearing this and digging the tea and cinnamon vibe. I think you got to go with 5 sprays though, or you're not going to smell anything, like one behind each ear, one in the neck, one in your chest, and one in your shirt. And even then, by the end of the day, I think you'll be lucky if you can smell the faintest trace of it, even on your shirt. So what can I say? This is a really good scent. It's tough for me to tell you to run out and try this though. Up until this, I was really invested in getting Gucci Pour Homme #1, which, as I said, if it's not discontinued, it's damn near impossible to find in New York City. And I was willing to pay a bit of a premium to add that to my collection. But you know, now I've got to give that a lot of pause because I really don't want fragrances that are going to have this kind of spotty longevity, and I really don't want to spend close to over $100 to make that sort of investment. I really don't. But again, as I said, I think if you go to base notes, you'll see a lot of people like this scent. It's just really ruined by its strength. I mean, maybe they should do an Eau de Parfum version, or an intense version, or an absolute version, or an extreme version. But as I said, it seems like Gucci really wants to focus on that Gucci guilty line and make more generic scents. And this isn't generic. This is daring. It's a little bit out there. It's something you would expect from a niche brand instead of a designer brand. And you know, this might be their last real fragrance. You know, maybe something that was thought up during the Tom Ford era And the last fragrance with any real balls to it. I mean, that we've seen, you know, Rush is gone, Gucci Rush, Gucci Envy's gone, Gucci Pour Homme 1 is gone. This is definitely getting phased out. It's not pushed anywhere as hard as Guilty is or Gucci by Gucci. So if you can get your hands on this, I would. And if you can deal with the longevity issues, then it's great for you. Or if you don't like really powerful scents and you want something light, then, you know, this would be good for you too. But just, again, I'm giving it a 5 out of 10 because it smells great, but I have a serious problem with the longevity. So don't say I didn't warn you, all right? Anyway, guys, that is it for this week's episode of Maximilian Must Know. We will be back on Wednesday with a new spot I'm doing where I'm going to sample a couple of samples that I got of 3 fragrances, and we're going to talk about whether I think they're bottle-worthy, whether I would just discard the sample, or whether I would give them some more time. And then we'll be back next Sunday with a niche fragrance review from the Old English House of Penhaligon's. So I'll see you next week. 2 videos next week. I wish you all a great week. Happy weekend. Be safe. Thank you for watching.